Shalom, Hebrews and Hebrews. Welcome to the channel and today's daily reading of 1 Kings chapter 6 and 1 Corinthians chapter 5. We're going to go ahead and squeeze both of these short little chapters in together today in this one video. And so if you are new to the channel and you like the content, please go click the subscribe button and the little bell icon next to it, and then click all, and you will get notified when I make new videos. And so with that said, let's get reading. I'm going to flip the camera around, and we have a seismic crew out here running around there. They kind of look, I don't know, it's a little bit interesting. Let's see if I can zoom in. These guys here, we call them beetle thumpers. And what they do is they set up these seismic monitors around in this area. And then those three little carts, vehicles right there, they've got these vibrators, big vibrators right in the middle of them, and then they stop and these vibrators go to the ground and they turn them on and it vibrates. And I'm not sure exactly on all the intricacies of it, but it sends vibrations and seismic throughout the area, and they can kind of get a gist of what they're looking for, porous rock and whatnot. And so anyway, they're kind of crazy watching them. It kind of reminds me of when Jesus says, when the blind lead the blind, they both fall in the ditch, because they cruise all around out here, and then one will stop, and then the next two pull up next to him, and wherever the first one goes, the other two follow. And so, I don't know, it's kind of interesting to watch. Let's get to reading. 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 1 says, "It came to be in the 480th year of the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, Mitzrayim, in the 4th year of the reign of Solomon over Israel, in the new moon of Ziwe, which is the 2nd new moon, that he began to build the house of Yahweh." All right, so 2nd new moon would be into the 30th, after the 30th day, beginning this, let's see, which is the 2nd new moon. All right, so 60 days he's been building the temple to Yahweh, the permanent building, rather than the temporary that they once had. And it looks like our little beetle company has left us. Anyway, and so the 480th year, that's 480 years since they've come out of Egypt. Verse 2, "And the house which King Solomon built for Yahweh was 60 cubits long, 20 wide, and 30 cubits high." All right, so if you want to do the math on that, a cubit is approximately 18 inches. So do 18 times 60 cubits is the length. 18 times 20 would be the width, and 18 times 30 would be the height. Speaking on that, here in the Western culture, and I don't remember exactly when we made it standard, when it became a standard. Prior to that, a cubit was the length of a man's forefinger, the tip of his middle finger to his elbow, and that would be considered a cubit. Well, you have short guys have a shorter cubit, and tall, lanky guys have a longer cubit, and so the variation of a cubit would vary. Whereas today we have a standard unit of measurement, whether it be the metric system or the SAE. I used to think it was standard American English, but it's not standard American English, and I can't remember what it is. But it's actually named after a motor company, the SAE. And so you either got inches or centimeters today, and that's a standard unit of length. If I tell you my house is 360 foot wide by 450 foot long, you can multiply those two together and you can get the square footage. It's exact. Everybody goes by the same standard of measurements, and you're not going to get okay, well, I need a board cut 3 cubits long. Well, my cubit different than your cubit. I'm going to get either a shorter or a longer board than what I need. Whereas today, if I tell you I need a board 12 foot long, I get a 12 foot long board. and it's standard. That's the same way with Yahweh's word. Yahweh's word is a standard. And when we begin breaking off into different denominations, we begin changing that standard a little bit, tweaking a little bit. It's no different than the cubit. That makes sense? All right. Verse 3. Let's just read this here, because we're going to speak on the temple here. And the porch of the front of the temple of the house was 20 cubits long, according to the breadth of the house, and its width 10 cubits from the front of the house. And he made for the house windows with narrowed frames. And against the wall of the house he built rooms all around, against the walls of the house, all around the temple and the speaking place. Thus he made side rooms all around. The lowest side room was 5 cubits wide, and the middle one was 6 cubits wide, and the third one 7 cubits wide. For he made narrow ledges around the outside of the house, so as not to lay hold on the walls of the house. And the house, when it was being built, was built with finished stone, made ready beforehand, so that no hammer or chisel or any iron tool was heard in the house while it was being built. The doorway for the middle side room was on the right side of the house, and they went up by stairs to the middle side rooms, and from the middle to the third. And so he built the house and completed it. And he paneled the house with beams and boards of cedar, and he built the side rooms of the structure against all the house, each 5 cubits high. And they were fastened to the house with cedar beams. And the word of Yahweh came to Solomon, saying, This house which you are building, if you walk in my laws, and do my right rulings, and shall guard my commands, and walk in them, then I shall confirm my word with you, which I spoke to your father David, and shall dwell in the midst of the children of Israel, and not forsake my people Israel. So Solomon built the house and completed it, and he built the walls of the house inside with cedar boards from the floor of the house to the ceiling. He paneled them on the inside with wood, and covered the floor of the house with planks of cypress. And he built 20 cubits at the rear of the house from floor to wall with cedar boards, and he built it inside as a speaking place, as the most set apart place. And the house was 40 cubits, and it is the temple before it. And the cedar for the house inside was carved with ornaments and open flowers, all with cedar, not a stone was seen. And he prepared the speaking place in the midst of the house to place the ark of the covenant of Yahweh there. And the front of the speaking place was 20 cubits long, and 20 cubits wide, and 20 cubits high. And he overlaid it with refined gold, and overlaid the altar of cedar. And Solomon overlaid the inside of the house with refined gold, and made gold chains pass over the front of the speaking place, and overlaid it with gold. Thus he overlaid the entire house with gold, until the entire house was completed, and the entire altar was by the speaking place he overlaid with gold. And inside the speaking place he made 2 cherubim of olive wood, 10 cubits high, and one wing of the cherub was 5 cubits, and the other wing of the cherub 5 cubits, 10 cubits from the tip of one wing to the tip of the other. And the other cherub was 10 cubits. Both cherubim were of the same size and shape. The height of one cherub was 10 cubits, and so was the other cherub. Now, that's a big looking angel, 10 cubits high. 10 cubits would be what, 18 feet? 18 feet tall. And he placed the cherubim in the midst of the inner house, and they stretched out the wings of the cherubim, so that the wing of the one touched one wall, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall, and their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. And he overlaid the cherubim with gold, and he carved all the walls of the house all around, both inside and out, with carved figures of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers. And he overlaid the floor of the house with gold, inside and outside. And for the entrance of the speaking place he made doors of olive wood, the lintel, doorposts, a 5th. And the 2 doors were of olive wood, and he carved on them figures of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold. And he spread the gold on the cherubim and on the palm trees. And so he made the doorposts of the door of the temple of olive wood, a 4th part. and 2 doors were of cypress wood, and 2 leaves of one folded, and 2 leaves of the other door folded, and carved cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold laid smoothly on the carved work. And he built the inner courtyard with 3 rows of hewn stone and a row of cedar beams. In the 4th year, the foundation of the house of Yahweh was laid in Mount Zawi, in the month of Zul, and in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, the 8th new moon, the house was completed in all its matters and according to all its plans. Thus he built it for 7 years. So it took him 7 years to complete this this temple, this permanent dwelling place. Go look. You can go to Google and look up what olive wood looks like and what cypress wood looks like. And then imagine going to like Washington, D.C. and all the artwork in the buildings that are carved into the marble stone. And that would be a sad, sad representation of what this temple would have looked like at that time. It's hard for me to envision it in my mind as I read it. And so I've went and I've looked up pictures of the temple, of course, but they don't do it justice, I don't believe. Because just like myself, I have a hard time visioning this. We don't know what the temple really looked like. We can just kind of envision it by looking at something of today's standards. And so it would be a sad, sad representation. Even like our White House, where our president lives here in America, or Buckingham Palace in London, where the Queen lives. Sad, sad representation. And even the work, the craftsmanship, would be a sad example compared to what this would have looked like in those times. All right, so let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 5. Corinthium Aleph, verse 1 says, chapter 5, verse 1 says, "It is commonly reported that there is whoring among you, and such whoring as is not even named among the nations, so as one to have his father's wife." All right, so Paul's writing, he's like, man, I've heard about this stuff. You guys are doing things that even the nations aren't sick enough to do. I'm going to equate that today in today's modern cultural Christianity. Same thing. We're doing things that, not we're, but there's things goes on in churches that is more wicked and evil than the world even thought about doing. So Paul's hitting them up here. He's like, you're even taking your father's wife? What's wrong with you people? Verse 2, "And you have been puffed up, and did not rather mourn, so that he who has done this deed be removed from among you?" Now, I mentioned it in my message to the assembly this week that in these days, to be thrown out of the church was a death sentence. Kind of like the gazelle, when he gets separated from the herd, the lion's going to eat him. Well, to be kicked out of the church, you didn't just go down the street and go to another church, go to another body. The church, there was one church body for believers in Yeshua, and so being ousted from the church was detrimental to your livelihood. And so Paul's saying, you're allowing this leaven to continue to spread through your walls and cause further stumbling. What's wrong with you people? Verse 3, "For I indeed, as absent in body, but present in spirit, have already judged the one who did this, as though I were present." All right, Paul's like, I've heard about this dude, and y'all are letting him stay in there. Y'all haven't even confronted him about this. I have to hear about it way over here. Verse 4, "In the name of our Master Yeshua Messiah, when you are gathered together, and my spirit, with the power of our Master Yeshua Messiah, deliver such a one to Satan for destruction of the flesh, in order that his spirit might be saved in the day of the Master Yeshua." Throw him out of the church, is what Paul's saying. Throw him out. Let his flesh suffer, that he might find repentance in that suffering. For your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the entire lump? Right? Leaven is equated with sin. Okay? Sin rises amongst the flesh. And so if we do not keep that out, now we're coming up to Passover, unleavened bread, at the end of this month. We are instructed, per Leviticus 23, to get all leaven out of our homes. And the first year that me and my wife done this, when we began getting the leaven out of our homes, I just thought get a couple loaves of bread and we were good. Get the flour out, we were good. Well, when I began reading the ingredients of some of the foods we had in our cabinets and pantry, I was like, whoa, this all has yeast in it, which is leaven. I did not realize how much yeast was in my home. Well, that made me realize and equate that with spiritual matters. Until we really start evaluating our lives and seeking out Yahweh, we don't realize how much sin is in our lives. And sin is transgression of the law. And so, the first year that we done Passover, I began evaluating. I'm like, all right, let's dig into Yahweh's commands and statutes, his right rulings, and see where we're falling in error and what can we do to change our lifestyle to fix it. And we began doing that 4 years ago. So Paul saying right here, a little leaven leavens the entire lump. One sin is as if you'd sinned everything, according to what Jesus says. And so one sin can destroy you and send you to hell. One sin that Adam created and that Adam did in the garden. I didn't mean to say created. The one sin that Adam committed in the garden corrupted the entirety of God's creation. So you think sin ain't serious? It's serious. Verse 7, therefore cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. For also Messiah, our Passover, was slaughtered for us. We are new creatures in Christ, all right? So I'll give you that you were from birth homosexual or murderous or a thief or whatever the sin may be. I'll give it to you. But when you come into Christ and you give your life to Christ, that has to pass away. That becomes a new lump without leaven. Make sense? I hope so. Verse 8, so then, let us celebrate the festival, not with oat leaven, nor with the leaven of evil and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. I wrote to you in my letter not to keep company with those who are whores. Don't even hang out with them. It'll jump off on you. And I certainly did not mean with those of this world who whore, or with the greedy of gain, or swindlers, or idolaters, since then you would need to go out of the world. Okay, what Paul's saying there is, in essence, those are the church that those who call themselves believers, who doesn't want to conform to Christ, be done with them. But not those in the world who don't know Christ. Go and talk to those of Christ or that are of the world. Get them to understand this. That's what Paul's saying here. Don't shun everyone. You know, I'm not going to break bread with that guy because, shoot, he ain't been to church. If he went into church, he'd burn the building down. Those are the ones you go to. That's what Paul's saying. Because if you shunned everyone who were sinful, you would never be. You'd have to just leave and go to the moon, basically. All right. So we have to discern this. All right. Now if I got a brother that's Jesus this, Jesus that, and I see him cheating on his wife, and I tell him about it, and he don't want to quit, or I see him being a thief, skimming the books, and he don't want to quit, then I'm to cut off that relationship with him. I'm to cut ties with him. But I got my neighbor down the street, and they're like, well, I don't have a problem with church and Jesus and all that. It's not for me. Then I'm to work on that relationship. I'm to work on that to be that ambassador for Christ to that individual. What Paul's saying. But those who claim to be believers and acting foolish, shun them. Don't even sit at the table with them. Verse 11, but now I've written to you not to keep company with anyone called a brother. See, brother, there's a difference between a brother and a neighbor. If he is one who whores, or greedy of gain, or an idolater, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or swindler, not even to eat with us such a one. For what I have to do with judging outsiders. Do you not judge those who are inside? But Elohim judges those who are outside, and put away the wicked one from among you. That comes from Devarim 13:5, or Deuteronomy 13:5. Deuteronomy 13:5 is also the test of those who claim to be teachers and prophets and seers. That's the test to test them whether they are of Yahweh or not. Okay. Perfect time. Does that make sense on how Jesus ate with tax collectors and thieves and whatnot, versus how he come down on the Pharisees and Sadducees? I hope so. Think about what was written there and what was said, what Paul said. All right. Now then, we read in the Old Testament the beauty of the permanent temple. As we come into following Christ, we should be working on our temple, which is us. And we just spoke on that not too long ago, about the temple in our bodies and whatnot, and how to be careful with that. So go back and look at my video on 1 Corinthians 1, 2, or 3 if you haven't seen that one. And I get a little more in depth on this. But we should be growing day by day. We should be building day by day, making it more beautiful, more pleasant, and less sinful. When we see we're in sin, we need to be like David and quickly run from it. Depart. Not justify it. Well, you know, Pastor so-and-so says it's okay if you're like this. No, it's not. So with that said, let's let that be the word today. Y'all be blessed, be encouraged, and always be frustrated. I'm Oilfield Disciple, and we will catch you on the next reading.